My wife lied about her affair with our business partner, then secretly transferred $300, $0 of our shared assets to his account before I found out. Now he's claiming ownership of half our property in court. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. It all started with little signs, things I brushed off at first. She'd be late from work more often, claiming she was stuck in meetings or said she had to stay late at the office. I didn't think much of it. We had a busy life. She's a marketing executive. I run a small but growing construction business. We were supposed to be happy, or so I thought. But behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. The first real red flag was when I noticed her phone kept ringing at odd hours. She'd quickly silence it or put it face down. I'd see her glance at her screen and hurriedly hide her phone when I walked into the room. That wasn't unusual in itself. Women can be secretive about their phones. But when I started noticing she'd delete messages, clear her browsing history, and even change her passwords on social media, I knew something was wrong. Still, I told myself it was just paranoia. Maybe she was just being cautious about work contacts or something. Then came the night I found her in our bedroom, acting nervous. She was trying to hide her phone behind her back. I asked her what she was doing and she brushed it off, acting like I was overreacting. That's when I saw it, an unopened message from someone named Alex, with a picture attached. I recognized the name immediately. Alex was our business partner, a guy I trusted, a guy I'd gone into business with for 3 years now. They'd always been friendly, sometimes joking around, but I never suspected anything more than a professional relationship. I looked at the message. It was a photo of Lisa, half naked, in a hotel room. The caption was something like, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." My stomach dropped, my partner's wife, having sex with him. This was beyond anything I'd ever imagined. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. How could she do this? How long had it been going on? And what was I supposed to do now? I confronted her immediately. I asked her about the message, and she spun some ridiculous story. Said it was just a joke, that Alex was just a friend, that I was paranoid. She looked me dead in the eyes and called me crazy. Said I was jealous, insecure, overthinking things. But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew what I saw. I could feel the betrayal deep in my bones. The next day I started digging. I knew I had to find out how far this went. I hired a private investigator just to get some proof. Meanwhile, I kept a close watch on her activities, her bank accounts, her emails. It was like peeling an onion, layer after layer of lies and deceit. Then I found out she had secretly transferred $300, $0 of our shared assets into Alex's bank account. That was the real shocker. I had no idea she was capable of that kind of betrayal, of stealing from us like that. It turns out she'd been funneling money to him for months, claiming it was investment money or loans, but I knew better. I tracked the transfer, saw the account number, and confirmed it with the bank. It was her signature on the transfer documents. I felt numb. All those years, all the trust I'd placed in her, was crumbling in an instant. And the worst part, she had no remorse. When I confronted her with the evidence, she just sneered and said, "You're overreacting. It's none of your business." I couldn't believe her. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray me and our life together for some guy who, at this point, was just a parasite feeding off our hard work? I realized then that I was in the middle of something much bigger than I had imagined. Not only was she cheating on me, but she was also stealing from us, our future, our security, everything we had built together. I spent days trying to process what I'd found. My mind kept going back to the moments I'd missed, the subtle signs I'd ignored. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it sooner, how I was so blind to her lies. I was furious, devastated, and feeling completely betrayed. But what hit me hardest was the realization that this wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about her complete disregard for everything we shared. She lied about the affair, lied about the money, and now she was claiming she was the victim. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to find a way to fight back, to protect what was left of my life and my dignity. The plan was starting to form in my mind: revenge, justice, whatever you want to call it. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, especially not after what she'd done. But I also knew I had to be careful. She was manipulative, a master at lying, and I had to outsmart her if I wanted to win this. That's where I am now. The wheels are turning. I've got the evidence, I've got her cornered, and I'm ready to take back what's mine. But I also feel like I'm walking a tightrope. One wrong move and I could lose everything myself. Still, I can't just sit back and let her get away with this. I need to end it one way or another. And I know the fight isn't over yet. After I gathered all the evidence, her secret transfer of $300, $0, the photos, the messages, I realized I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to plan carefully. If she was capable of lying so effortlessly and stealing from us, I had to be smarter than her. I started digging into her bank accounts, her email, her social media. I wanted to know if she had any more secrets hidden away. I also knew I had to confront her face to face, but I didn't want her to have the upper hand. So I waited. I let her think everything was normal, that I didn't know a thing. Meanwhile, I spoke with a lawyer, trying to understand my rights and what I could do legally. The lawyer's advice was clear. She's committed fraud and theft, and I have a solid case. But I also knew that legal battles take time, and I didn't want to give her the chance to manipulate or lie her way out of it. One evening, I decided it was time to confront her directly. I told her I needed to talk, that I had something serious to discuss. She was her usual bitchy self, rolling her eyes, acting annoyed. She tried to brush me off, saying she was tired, that I was overreacting again. But I didn't back down. I laid everything out on the table: the messages, the transfer records, the proof I'd collected. I told her I knew about her affair with Alex, about the money she stole, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Her reaction was classic Lisa: defensive, dismissive, and full of lies. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I work hard and I've been stressed. Alex is just a friend, and the money, that's just business. You're paranoid as usual." She even had the audacity to add, "You think I'd cheat on you and steal from us? You're delusional." But I knew better. I sensed her desperation, her attempt to manipulate the situation. I stayed calm, but inside I was boiling. The emotional hit me hard. I felt rage, heartbreak, and a deep sense of betrayal. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with the fact that the woman I married had been lying to me, cheating on me, and stealing from us for months. My mind kept flashing back to all those moments she'd been distant, secretive, and dismissive. It was like a puzzle coming together in a cruel way. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I also knew I had to stay rational. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't let her continue to lie and manipulate. I also knew I had to protect myself financially. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the money she'd stolen and the future she was trying to destroy. I decided I'd file for a legal separation, and I'd get a court order to freeze all her accounts. I wanted her to see I was serious. I also planned to hire a private investigator to keep tabs on her until I figured out her next move. I remember feeling overwhelmed, like I'd been hit by a truck. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had turned out to be a liar and a thief, and I was just supposed to sit here and accept it. No way. I had to fight back, not just for my money but for my dignity. I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare, but the nightmare was real and I was in the middle of it. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not after everything she'd done. I had to be strong, even if I was falling apart inside. So I started planning my next moves: legal, financial, and emotional. I knew I'd have to be prepared for her lies, her denials, and even her attempts to manipulate the court. But I also knew I had the truth on my side, and I was done playing nice. It was time to take back what was mine, and I wasn't going to stop until I did. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering evidence and lining up my legal options. I knew Lisa would try to spin everything, deny her involvement, and maybe even pretend she was the victim. That's just who she was, manipulative, bitchy, always trying to control the narrative. But I refused to let her. I had the proof now. The bank transfer records, the messages, the photos. I also hired a private investigator to keep an eye on her movements, just in case she tried to hide or move more assets. Meanwhile, Lisa acted like nothing had changed. She went to work, played the victim whenever I pressed her on anything, and threw tantrums when I questioned her about her whereabouts. She'd lie, deny, and then get angry when I called her out. At one point, she snapped at me, saying, "You're just jealous because I'm better than you. You're insecure, and that's why you're trying to accuse me of this crap." That's when I lost my temper. I told her she was a liar and a thief, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. One evening, I decided I needed to confront her again, this time with more concrete proof. I sat her down in the living room, laid everything out, screenshots of her messages with Alex, the transfer documents, everything. Her face twisted into a sneer as I showed her the evidence. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "You're crazy. You must be imagining things. Alex and I are just friends. You're just paranoid because you're insecure about losing your business." She even had the nerve to accuse me of spying on her, as if I was the villain here. Was furious. I told her she could lie all she wanted, but the truth would come out in court. That's when she started crying fake tears, of course. She tried to play the victim, saying I was ruining her life, that I was jealous of her success and trying to control everything. I just shook my head. I knew her game. Behind those tears was a cold, manipulative woman who'd lied and cheated her way into her own downfall. I realized then that I couldn't trust her anymore, not even for a second. The emotional toll was massive. I felt anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I'd gone from loving her to feeling like I didn't even know her. Every moment I spent with her now was tinged with suspicion and disgust. I wondered how I'd let it get this far, how I'd been blind for so long. But I also knew I had to stay focused. I had to protect myself, my assets, and my future. I decided that I couldn't keep living like this. I had to take control of the situation. I filed for legal separation and demanded a court freeze on all her accounts and assets. I wanted her to realize I was serious. I also contacted a forensic accountant to trace any other suspicious transactions. I knew she was capable of more sneaky tricks, and I wanted to be prepared. At this point, I was exhausted emotionally and physically, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized Lisa's real character: selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. But I was also determined. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. I made a vow to myself. I would get to the bottom of this mess, expose her lies, and reclaim what's rightfully mine. I started to see that this wasn't just about the money or her affair. It was about respect, trust, and the boundaries she crossed. I knew I'd need patience and resilience, but I also knew I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. The coming days would be crucial. I had to stay strong, stay smart, and keep my eyes open. I'd come too far to back down now. The truth had to come out, and I was determined it would. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, financial audits, and endless sleepless nights. I kept my cool in front of Lisa, but inside I was boiling. Every time she tried to spin her lies or act innocent, I could see right through her. She was good at pretending to be the victim, crying, whining, accusing me of betrayal while secretly plotting her next move. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight back. My lawyer advised me to prepare for a court hearing. The goal was to freeze her assets, get a court order to investigate any hidden accounts, and push for full financial disclosure. Meanwhile, I continued to monitor her activities through the PI, who reported that she was making suspicious calls and trying to move more money around. I knew she was trying to cover her tracks, but I had enough to make her regret it. I also hired a forensic accountant to dig into her financial records and trace every suspicious transaction. One evening, I decided I needed to confront her again, this time with a clear plan. I called her into the living room, sat her down, and laid everything out. I showed her the bank transfer records, the messages, the photos. I told her I knew about her affair with Alex, about the stolen money, and that I was going to take her to court. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back with her usual bitchy attitude. "Are you serious?" She spat. "You're just jealous, you're overreacting. Alex and I are just friends. You're paranoid as usual." She looked at me with that dismissive sneer and added, "You think you're so smart, but you're just a jealous, insecure loser. You don't have any proof. You're just making things up because you're afraid of losing control." I stared at her, feeling a mix of disgust and anger. I knew her game and I wasn't falling for it. I told her, "I have everything on paper. I'm taking this to court. You can spin your lies all you want, but the truth will come out." I saw her eyes narrow, then she tried a different approach, crying, fake tears streaming down her face, trying to look innocent. "Why are you doing this to me?" she sobbed. "I've been under so much stress. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I love you, I swear. I never wanted to hurt you." Her voice cracked and I could see the manipulative woman behind her tears, but I was done falling for her act. I knew her lies, her excuses, they were just that, lies. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, greedy, and willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. I had to stay strong for myself and for what was right. I told her I was done with her manipulations, that I was going to fight this in court and that she better prepare for the consequences. I also made it clear that I would not tolerate any attempt to hide or transfer more money. I had the forensic accountant tracing every transaction, and I was ready to seize any assets she tried to move. I knew her ego was bruised. She hated feeling cornered. That's when she started to lash out, calling me names, accusing me of being controlling and jealous. But I didn't care. I'd heard enough lies. I was determined to see this through. That night I sat alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I finally had proof and was taking action, and dread because I knew this would get messier before it got better. Still, I couldn't let her get away with it. I was done being the victim of her lies. I decided I'd fight this in court, expose her for the liar and thief she was, and reclaim what was mine. In the meantime, I was also preparing emotionally. I knew this wasn't just a legal battle, it was a battle for my dignity and self-respect. I had to be ready for her next move, whether it was more lies, attempts to manipulate the court, or even a desperate attempt to run away with more money. But I was ready. I had the evidence, the support, and the resolve. Lisa had pushed me to the edge, and I wasn't going to back down now. The truth was coming out, and she was going to pay for what she did. The court date finally arrived after weeks of endless preparation. I could feel the weight of everything, my anger, betrayal, frustration pressing down on me. Lisa, of course, showed up dressed to look innocent, but I knew her game. She was trying to look like the victim, crying fake tears and giving her best poor me act. I couldn't help but feel a mix of disgust and contempt. I sat there, clutching my legal documents and evidence, knowing I was about to expose her for the fraudster and liar she'd become. The court proceedings started with her lawyer trying to downplay everything, claiming there was no evidence of theft or affair, just a misunderstanding. Lisa sat there, smirking at me as if she was already winning. But I had the proof: screenshots, bank records, the transfer documents. I presented everything meticulously, each piece of evidence highlighting her deception. When I showed the court the transfer of $300, $0 to Alex's account, her face went pale. She tried to protest, but her lawyer's objections were overruled. The judge looked at her with a stern expression and asked for clarification. Lisa's excuses started to fall apart under cross-examination. She claimed she transferred the money for investment purposes, that Alex was her business partner, and that I had no right to question her. I couldn't believe her audacity. She even tried to spin her affair as a misunderstanding, saying she was under stress and that it was a mistake. But the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was too clear and her lies too transparent. As the hearing progressed, the judge ordered a freeze on her assets and a full forensic audit of all her accounts. They also ordered her to produce all financial records related to the transfer and her dealings with Alex. I felt a huge sense of relief. At least now, She couldn't hide or transfer any more money. I also requested a court order to investigate her phone and email for any further evidence of fraud or deception. I knew this wasn't over yet, but it was a critical step forward. Throughout the hearing, I felt a strange mixture of emotional exhaustion and a tiny flicker of hope. I'd fought so hard to get here, to bring her lies into the light, and now I saw her struggling to maintain her facade. I realized that her manipulative tactics were crumbling, and I had the truth on my side. When the judge finally announced the temporary measures, I felt a wave of relief. The court was taking this seriously, and Lisa's control over our assets was slipping away. After the hearing, Lisa stormed out of the courtroom, screaming and crying, calling me all sorts of names. But I didn't care. I knew I had won the first major battle. The court's orders meant she couldn't run or hide anymore, and I could start the process of reclaiming what she'd stolen. I felt a strange sense of empowerment, like I finally took control of my life again. That night, I sat alone, reflecting on everything. I knew there was still a long road ahead with more lies to uncover and more battles to fight. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was on the right track. The betrayal ran deep, but I was determined not to let her destroy me. I'd fought for my dignity, my money, and my future. Lisa's manipulations had pushed me to the edge, but I was still standing. I knew the court's decision was just the beginning, but it was a crucial step in making her pay for what she'd done. I'd be damned if I let her walk away with everything. Her lies, her affair, her theft, they all had consequences now. I was ready to see this through no matter what it took. The truth was out, and the fight for my life and my property was just getting started. In the weeks that followed the court hearing, everything changed. The court's orders froze her accounts, and the forensic audit uncovered even more hidden transactions. More money she'd secretly funneled to Alex, additional accounts she'd set up without my knowledge. It was like peeling back layers of a lie, each one revealing how deep her deception went. Meanwhile, Lisa's attempts to manipulate the situation only made her look more desperate. She tried to spin it all as a misunderstanding, a mistake she'd regret, but nobody was buying it anymore. The evidence was too damning. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me was glad I finally had the truth out in the open and that she couldn't hide or steal anymore. The other part was devastated. Losing the woman I loved, or thought I loved, was a blow I'd never recover from. But I also knew I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to focus on rebuilding, on protecting what was left of my life and my business. The legal process dragged on for months. I went through the divorce, and Lisa fought every step of the way, trying to turn the tables, accusing me of controlling her, claiming I'd been abusive and unreasonable. She even tried to claim I was trying to ruin her reputation. But the court saw through her lies. The evidence of her affair, her theft, and her manipulations was overwhelming. Eventually, a judge ordered her to pay restitution for the stolen money, and she was forced to relinquish most of her assets, including some property that she had tried to claim in court. Throughout it all, I stayed focused on my own healing. I cut ties with her completely, blocked her from my social media, and minimized contact. I wanted nothing more to do with her lies and manipulations. I also realized I had to be more careful. Trust had been broken so badly that I knew I'd never be able to fully trust anyone again. But I also learned something valuable, that even after betrayal I could stand up, fight back, and reclaim my life. Looking back, I see how her greed, her lies, and her betrayal almost destroyed everything I built. But I also see the strength I found in myself during those dark times. I learned to be cautious, to verify, and to never take trust for granted. Most importantly, I learned that justice, while sometimes delayed, can still be served if you're willing to fight for it. Now, I'm rebuilding my business, focusing on my kids, and trying to move forward. The pain doesn't completely go away, but I've come to accept that some scars are part of the process. I still get angry when I think about how she lied and stole, but I also feel a strange sense of closure. I hope my story serves as a warning about who you trust, about the importance of protecting your assets, and about the fact that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people closest to you. In the end, I'm thankful I fought for what was right. I may have lost my wife, but I gained clarity, strength, and a new perspective on life. And if there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's this. Never ignore the signs. Always protect your assets and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if it means tearing down everything you thought was real. Because sometimes, the only way to truly move on is to confront the lies, fight for justice, and rebuild from the ashes.